Most of the time when we play Pokemon games, our rivals choose the weaker or stronger starter towards ours. This is all based on different factors that decide what they will have compared to you. However, what are the true starters of these trainers if we look past the obvious stuff in the video games? So today we are analyzing what characteristics would push the different rivals towards certain starters. You also gotta remember that a lot of rivals and characters in Pokemon show up in different sorts of media with different personalities and Pokemon, and it can differ a lot between the manga, anime, and the games. So we'll have to take all that into account when exploring what their true starters are. Now, starting this off is going to be none else than Pokemon Trainer Blue. Blue is arguably the most popular rival in Pokemon and is represented in a lot of different ways. He of course shows up in all the Kanto-related Pokemon games, and his counterpart in the Pokemon anime is also known as Gary, and in the manga he's known as Blue in English but Green in Japanese. Now, in the anime, Gary carries around his trusted Squirtle, which of course makes a lot of people believe that that is his true starter. However, if you look at what Blue uses in the manga as well as in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, it changes quite a bit and we see Blue using Charmander and Charizard rather than Squirtle or Blastoise. And in several promotional artworks by Sugimori, we can also see that Charmander or Charizard are alongside Blue rather than Squirtle. However, then there is the Pokemon Origins anime, where Blue uses Squirtle rather than Charmander, and Red of course uses Charmander instead. And since the Origins anime is based on the video games, I guess we can constitute that in the video games Blue uses Squirtle for the most part, right? So I guess it's a split between Squirtle and Charmander as being his true starter, but if I was to pick one, I'd probably say Squirtle, as it just fits better with Blue being called, well, Blue. It just feels like it fits him a lot better than any other one of the Generation 1 starters, as it just feels like it matches well with his personality. But we can't dismiss the fact that Charmander seems to have been the original plan for him to have. Silver is probably my favorite rival, and he had a strange journey in the Pokemon franchise. Now, he has had a lot of an easier time and doesn't show up in as many Pokemon medias or games the way that Blue does. And in the games, of course, he chooses the opposite of you, which of course is the Pokemon that he steals. Now, as for the manga, we see him using Totodile, which he then evolves into a Feraligatr eventually, and etc. And as for any other appearances, we don't really have any examples, as in the games he chooses the opposite of you and doesn't really make an appearance in the Pokemon anime, and much else than that. I mean, really the manga is all we really know about, and in the Pokemon Generations anime, we don't actually see what his starter is. And I think the only time we'll truly know what his real true starter is once we actually see what his sync pair is in Pokemon Masters. So I guess we can really just constitute from that his true starter is probably Totodile. Next up is Wally, Brandon, and May. Yeah, now this is going to be a difficult one because Wally is kind of the true rival of Hoenn. However, because of the whole May and Brandon thing, it makes it kind of hard to define who is the real rival. So if we go with Wally as one of the rivals, to begin with, right, we run into a problem. In the video games, Wally never chooses a starter because he'd rather just, get a Ralts, which you help him catch. And as for the anime, he doesn't really make much of an appearance, and in the manga, he does for a temporary time have a Trico. So it could be argued that Trico is his true starter, but I'd rather argue that Ralts is the one and only true starter for him, as it kind of should be. But if we were to actually choose one of the Hoenn starters, it probably would be Trico. However, what if we look at Brendan and May as the real rivals, then who is their true starter? Well, for Brendan, that would be a bit of a mixture, because in the anime he uses Swampert, which means it could be Mudkip. However, in the manga, he's known as Ruby, and there he actually uses a Swampert as well, called Mumu. But then we have the Pokemon Generations short anime, where Brendan uses a Sceptile. And of course, let's not forget there's also Pokemon Masters, where the sync pair is actually a Trico. So I don't really know which one's the true one, but I guess you could pick either one, and honestly it could be Trico, but it could also be Mudkip. It just depends on how you want to look at it, and I think we could probably just say for now that it's probably Trico. Then we of course have May, who is a bit of a strange one because she does show up in the official anime alongside Ash, where she uses Torchic of course, and then there is the manga where she's not actually called May but rather Sapphire, and there she uses Torchic. So basically, yeah, she essentially would have Torchic as her true starter. That really goes along fully if you look at the anime, the manga, etc. So Torchic would probably be the true starter of May. Next we have the rival of Sinnoh, which is Berry. Now Berry makes an appearance in the official anime, where we see him using Piplup of course, and within the Pokemon Adventure manga he's known as Pearl, and there he does seem to use something slightly different, which is Chimchar, right? So it's kind of a bit of a difference there. And as for the Pokemon Masters game, there we get to see that he actually uses a Piplup. So I think the true starter for Barry most likely is Piplup because it makes the most sense. Like, it just seems like the one that fits the best, and considering that it's both in Pokemon Masters, which is kind of the definitive game for all the characters, you know, it feels like that's most likely the true starter for Barry. So next up we have Unova, which brings us Hugh, Sharon, and Bianca. So Sharon would be the first one. Showing up in Pokemon Black and White, both 1 and 2, Sharon though does seem to differ quite a bit between his different medias. In the manga, he has a Snivy as his starter, but in all other media, like anime and even Pokemon Masters, he mainly uses a Stoutland. So I guess we can say that his true starter would be Snivy, as it only really shows up once, and that's the only time we can define its true starter as. Then we have Hugh, who's probably the hardest one to pinpoint, as he doesn't have a defined starter in the games, and in the manga, he doesn't have a proper starter either, so he doesn't really have a proper starter there, and the only place we can actually see him using a starter is during the Pokemon Black and White 2 animated trailer, where we see him using a Samurott. So from that we know that his true starter is probably Oshawott. And last but not least, we have Bianca, the one I'd say is the least of a rival in my opinion from Unova, but as for her, in the manga she uses a Oshawott, so that conflicts with the starter that Hugh has, but you've got to keep in mind that she kind of does start her journey a little bit earlier than him. But then we also have Bianca in the Pokemon anime, where she uses Tepig, which is something she's well known for having, and in the animated trailer for Pokemon Black and White 2, she gives away a Tepig and Oshawott to Nate and Hugh, kind of basically mirroring that she's used both those Pokemon. So I guess you could kind of argue that her true starter is Tepig, mainly because it seems to be the one that matches the best with the official anime starter, and the one that doesn't conflict with what Hugh chooses or what his true starter would be, which is Samurott, right? So this way, I think Tepig would be her true starter. So next we have the Kalos rivals. Here it gets a bit confusing, as your actual rivals are Callum and Serena, aka the opposite of what the gender you choose to play as is, right? But you also have a semi-rival, which is Shauna, Tierno, and Trevor, which honestly are kind of forgettable and not really much of rivals in my opinion, so let's just go with Callum and Serena for this video as the true rivals here. Now, Callum is kind of difficult to find the exact Pokemon for. In, for example, the Pokemon Generations anime, we know that he uses a Chestnut, so that lets us know that Chespin is definitely a possible starter. However, in the Pokemon Masters game, he doesn't seem to really have a sync pair partner that is a starter whatsoever, like he doesn't seem to have one. And in the Pokemon Adventure manga, he uses a Chestnut as well, this one's called Mariso. So I think we know for a fact then that his true starter Pokemon has to be Chespin. Next we though have Serena, a fan favorite since she does show up in the Pokemon anime, but also in the video games and even the manga. So let's start with the anime first. In the official anime, Serena uses a Fennekin, a Pokemon that really does fit her. Then in the Pokemon manga, she's called Y, and there her starter is none, as she uses a set of different Pokemon instead of having a starter Pokemon like Fennekin. And finally in the video games, it is based on your choice, so I guess we could say that her true starter really just is Fennekin. Then we have Hau and Gladion. These two are some of the most recent rivals, so this shouldn't be too hard to pinpoint. First up is Hau, who we know in the manga uses a Poplio. However, in the Pokemon anime, he has a Dartrix that evolves into a Decidueye. As for any other media, we don't really know if he does have any other starters, so I guess you can choose what his true starter is, more or less, around which one he had the larger impact on the character himself. And I'd argue that it definitely would be Dartrix, or I guess Rowlet, more or less, as it's the only one that has been in the official anime in his roster. And as for Poplio, which is in the manga, I feel like it's less connected to him. As for Gladion, actually we don't really have a starter for him, because there is no starter Pokemon attached to Gladion, as he only really uses type Null and Silvally as his kind of starters. But if we were to choose a starter just for fun for Gladion, I think I'd probably say Litten would probably fit him the best. But we, however, do not have any Pokemon starter that we can actually connect to him directly. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this. I hope you did enjoy PokeFans, and I will catch you all in the next video here on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and bye-bye, PokeFans.